morning, dear friends. It's lovely to be with you again. My name is Colleen, and if this is the first time you've popped into this channel, you are so very welcome. If you're returning, thank you so much. It's just lovely to be in your company. So I thought today I'd share with you a quick way to make some gift bags, because at this time of the year, sometimes we're caught a little bit short and we need a gift bag in a hurry. So the things that you're going to need are a couple of napkins, and for today's video I'm choosing these 3 Christmassy napkins. Then we're going to need some brown paper bags. So I do have new paper bags, but you could obviously recycle an old paper bag, or you could even recycle an Amazon envelope. So I've got 3 of those. I've got a piece here of mulberry paper, also known as SAA paper, SAA, and this is a very soft paper. It's really nice, easy to tear. It gives quite a nice fluffy edge, and it's got these lovely veins from the mulberry leaves in them. The next thing that we're going to need is a pair of scissors, because I will need to cut out some of these borders. I'm going to actually cut some of them off, some of these napkins. Then I'll have my chalk paint, because I need to paint a background, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Little pliers, flat nose, just to open my can of paint. A nice wide brush. This is a hog's hair brush, and I'm just going to have some matte medium to be able to sorry, I'm lost for words and to be able to stick my napkins down. So that's all we're going to need to begin with. And I'm going to start by showing you what we're going to do in order to prepare the bag to be able to stick things down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my napkins and I'm going to create a little block. So I need to mark this out on my paper bag, because I need to be able to paint that area. And the reason is that these napkins are so thin, I don't want the brown of the actual paper on the bag showing through, because that's obviously going to discolor some of this image. You'll notice on your bags that you do have various fold marks, and on this particular one, because it has a gusset at the bottom, you'll see that there's a very faint line here where they've actually folded it, and I'm going to use that as a guide to actually put my napkin on, so it will be down just below the handles here. So I'm gently going to lift one of the corners and just make a little mark, and don't worry about these pencil marks, because as I say, we're going to be painting over them. So I'm just going to do that. The next thing will be to just start to prepare the napkins so that I'm ready. And to do that, you're wanting to take a nice pair of sharp scissors, and in this case I'm just going to cut out 1/4 of this napkin. This napkin doesn't have a border, so I'm not worrying about having to decide whether I'm going to keep the border or not. This is just an overall design, so I'm just cutting this out and I'm going to lay this aside. Love the little stars here. Right, so the rest of that could be used for a later project or to do some more bags. And you'll know with all your napkins that you have a couple of layers to them. Those are known as ply, and you only want to work with the top layer. So I think this one's probably got 3. So that's the top layer. And you want to just gently pull this off. You could use 2 pieces of sellotape to do that. Now, if I put this straight onto my craft bag, my brown, you're going to see that that has discolored the image quite a lot. Keep these little bits of paper for things like mopping up bits of glue and stuff. They're quite useful. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to paint that square that I've demarcated with some chalk white paint. And this will give me now a nice soft background to be able to put my napkin on. So I'm going to use my little flat nose tool, my little pliers, just to open my paint tin. Ease it all the way around. Try not to get paint stuck in the lip of your tin. It just makes it such a nightmare as time goes on. And another tip I can give you is that when you have paint and you've already opened the tin, store it upside down, because that dryness that happens around the top of a tin will be at the other end and won't affect the quality of the paint that you're wanting to work with. Come on, up we go. You could use a screwdriver to do this as well, but I just don't have one at hand. Now the chalk paint is a little bit thick and lumpy, so I'm just going to find myself a little skewer, and I'm going to quickly stir in that liquid moisture that's at the top, just to make sure that it's really nicely mixed before I start. It's quite goopy, which is fine, but by mixing it you'll find that you soften the paint and all these sort of lumpy bits become less. So give it a good stir, especially if your container has been sitting for a while. Right, so you can see all that liquid that was on the top now has been nicely absorbed into the paint itself. There we go. Get the skewer out the way. And now I'm going to take my nice big fat brush and I'm going to paint this area where I marked out it. And I don't mind if my paint mark goes a little bit beyond where I've done these lines. That also adds to the design. It can be quite a sort of a rough paint edge. That's also fine, unless you don't want to see any of the paint at all, but it actually adds to some of the charm to see some of the paint. Probably chosen a brush that's got too long a handle because my camera is right near here, so forgive me if I bump my camera, but I'll try my best. Right, so I'm going to give it one coat of this all over. Make sure you've got a nice even coating so it doesn't take too long to dry. And then we're going to repeat this with the other two bags. Right, so I've got around the edges roughly. I'm just going to kind of give feathery marks to the edge of my paint like this, because I'm quite happy to have my paint as being part of my design. So I'm turning it around so I can get it more or less the same on the opposite side. And the chalk paint is lovely because it dries so quickly. Okay, so that will be good to go, and that has now covered up some of the really sort of dark tone of the brown paper. Cool, so I'm going to put this aside and I'm just going to carry on painting the rest of the bags. Okay, so I have gone and separated my napkin into the piece that I want to use. So with some of the napkins you'll have the design that is repeated 4 times, like this particular one. And others of the napkins, like this one, only had 2 of the design with some other little bits on the side. The next thing that you're going to do now is to remove the background pliers. I think I've shown you this already, but I'll just remind you because it is such an important part of it. Gently pull away the backing paper so that you're just left with that lovely napkin that's crisp and clean and without any chance of looking really dull. Just to show you, even with the red, that if you were to put this straight onto the brown paper, your colors would immediately look a lot duller. So the first one that we're going to work on will be the one with the angel. I'm just going to move these aside. I have taken some of my mulberry paper and I've torn a strip off the top, and then I've torn it so that it actually fits just at the top of my bag, because I just felt that this angel would be quite flat on its own, but by putting a little bit of bling at the top, it's almost like hinting the wings, the atmosphere, the heavens. So I'm going to use that. So I'm going to take a nice soft bristle brush. This is a nice big one. I've dipped this in water and dried it so that the matte medium doesn't stick in the ferrules and clog it all up. And I'm just going to pour some of the matte medium straight onto my brush like that, and I'm just going to lift up this section, paint a strip, and then I'm going to stick it down and paint over it so that it's sealed. Your papers are going to start to look transparent, but don't worry about that. By the time they dry, they will be fine. So I'm just going to do that on the other side, and the soft bristles will make sure that you don't actually tear your paper too easily. Make sure though, when you're working with any of these sticky mediums that glue things down, that if you are using napkins and soft papers, that you always have liquid on your brush, because otherwise you're going to find that that in itself will cause it to tear. I'm going to position my napkin slightly over that SAR paper or the mulberry paper. I'm going to put a very generous layer onto my brush, and because the napkin is thin, I'm going to just allow the medium to soak straight through the napkin. So I'm going top to bottom, painting it out as quickly as I can to avoid wrinkles. You will get some, don't be distressed by that, just let them be and let things dry, but you want to make sure that everything sticks down. So you're going to do this as fast as you can, press out any air bubbles that there might be. Right, and I'm going to do exactly the same on the opposite side. Generous layer, quickly spread it. And by doing this nice and quickly, you're also not stretching your napkins too much, because that is something that can happen. And your napkin will be nicely sealed onto the surface. So what I'm looking for now is any little bits where I can see that maybe the paper is slightly flexible, the napkin paper. I think that that's all okay. So I'm going to set that aside to dry, but I just do want to quickly get a little bit of water on my J cloth and just clean up some of the edge here, which is quite difficult to do on the straight edge when you're brushing things quickly. These edges on the sides I'm not worried about, because I'm actually already got my paint there. You can see here that this area is slightly white underneath, which means that there's not enough liquid. So I'm just going to put a little bit more of my matte medium on, and a little bit over here. Right, I'm going to set that aside to dry. Let's now do the little nutcrackers, and for this I'm not going to use any mulberry paper. I'm just going to stick this down. The image is so much crisper on this, I think you'll agree, when you've got the white underneath. Well, my napkin has dried on my surface, and I just felt I wanted to add some bling, so I just took some Elmer's glue and I squeezed this out onto a little saucer that I have, and then all I'm doing is taking the end of a kebab stick and putting a dot of glue down onto my bag, and then putting one of these little sequin stars on there, and I just think that that adds a nice sort of bit of Christmas bling to the whole affair. You could do other things. You could actually take, for instance, a gold pen, and you could actually do some designs with a gold pen. You could write messages on them. You could even take some stamps and stamp a little Christmas message on there. That's entirely up to you. So I'm going to now leave this to dry, and when I have this completely dry, I'll show you all of the 3 bags together. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you've liked this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Bye for now.